Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 87, and as always, joined by my co-host Hugo here today. Hugo, it's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons. Yeah, so many episodes. Every time you say the number, and obviously it grows by one every time we record. Shock. Maths is clearly my forte, but no, it's just it's impressive how fast time goes by, really, and how many episodes we've racked up. And I mean, unfortunately, today we won't really be talking much about paddle itself, which is a massive shame, to be honest. And I do hope the whole Premier Padel scenario is sorted soon. But it's probably one of those juicy episodes that I'm sure a lot of people want to hear us chat about and share our opinions on, right?
Yeah, 100%. Unfortunately, this week we don't have a stellar guest to talk to who can give us insights into, their career and obviously into the paddle world itself. And, that's why we're here. We love paddle. But as you said, Hugo, I still think that it's going to be a very juicy episode with everything that is currently going on in Premier Padel and in the professional paddle landscape. So maybe we should get straight into it, don't you think?
100%.
Yeah. And maybe I think actually what would be useful is to start right at the beginning. I think it could be useful to give a bit of context to our listeners and just anyone really is tuning in right now, let's say to a random episode who's a new paddle fan and, they just see what the hell's going on. They see all these words out there and all these people talking about the tour, but they don't really have any context on what's going on. So I think maybe it's useful to start a bit at the beginning, because obviously as well, this has been kind of boiling over some time and there's really been a lot of developments, especially as of late. But I guess to kick things off and to really go where it started, it really started at the very beginning when Premier Padel took over World Padel Tour and kind of became the unified professional paddle tour. Because at this stage, the players, they had two offers on the table. They had World Padel Tour's offer and they had Premier Padel's offer. And they evidently went with Premier Padel for certain reasons, right? And I think we've kind of heard this theme going around that at that stage, Premier Padel has or promised certain things and, they sign a contract based on certain conditions, which evidently we've gotten to this stage because the players probably think that these conditions or these promises haven't been fulfilled. And I think as well, it's important to highlight it's not something that kind of just has happened now. And even last year, I think there's certain things which, we've seen and players have been vocal about the fact that they just weren't happy with things at the tour. I can think of things like the quali events, for example. So these used to be played in Madrid. Obviously, 90% of the professional paddle players kind of either live in Spain or a lot of them even lived in Madrid. So if you're playing a quali, it's not very hard to go to Madrid and it doesn't probably imply a lot of costs. Now, if you have to go to, let's say, South America or the Middle East to go play a quali round, all the costs that implies probably means that a lot of these players are losing money on these tournaments if they don't even make it past the first couple of rounds. We've also seen problems with the scheduling as well. Players kind of being very vocal about playing in extreme like heat conditions, for example. And even I remember when we had Sam Jones, he was very adamant around the point system and the fact that certain FIPs actually give you more than, for example, quali or even sometimes main draw tournaments. So that means that you have a lot of players that shouldn't be playing FIPs. And that obviously affects the players that are lesser ranked. And it doesn't allow them to progress. So there's just been all these kind of issues that I think at some point there's definitely been kind of further developments at the beginning of this year that have just completely made the players kind of say, hey, we're going to stop this and we're going to, try to put an end to this and we're going to essentially go on strike to make sure that Premier Padel hears us. Now, I don't think we really know the exact reason why there was this kind of sudden change. I've seen Manu Martin, for example, give an interview in a channel called Fuera Caretas. Great, by the way, it was a great interview, really recommend. He kind of mentioned that there was something that changed within a week, basically, that players didn't have any notice of this year. And that completely kind of just it basically tipped the glass, and the players essentially at that point had enough with everything that had been going on and decided to essentially boycott the Gijón P2 and what seemed as well like a boycott of the Cancún P2 as well, at least the top 100 players. But yeah, I mean, Hugo, is there anything else that maybe you want to add?
I mean, to be honest, I couldn't have put it better. And I wouldn't want to ruin it. Maybe the addition or the newest development is obviously Stupa and Lebrón, right? And for those of you who haven't heard, I'm sure pretty much all of our followers and fans have heard, given that it's been a bit of a bomb really in the paddle landscape. And it's the fact that Franco Stupaczuk and Juan Lebrón have registered for the Cancún P2 in Mexico that is starting today, if I'm not mistaken. Today, Monday. It might have started yesterday, it might start tomorrow, but it's one of those that starts between Sunday and Tuesday. Well, Franco Stupaczuk and Juan Lebrón are, if I'm not mistaken, the only pair out of the top 80 pairs that have registered for it. I think there's one other pair that I think you mentioned to me, Gons, yesterday when we were chatting about this offline. One other pair in the top 100 that potentially has registered for it. But basically, yeah, it's as if you play the Champions League and, I don't know, Liverpool registered for it, and the next club to participate is, I don't know, Bournemouth or something like that. It's just completely baffling. And obviously, I think it's going to cause a lot of controversy. Now, I've heard, I don't know whether you've read about this, Gons, but I saw a couple of posts on Instagram saying that the PPA will be giving a rueda de prensa, so like an interview tomorrow afternoon, mid-afternoon in Spain, and it'll probably be a few representatives of the PPA, so a few senior players, I'm sure. And I'm sure they'll talk about the whole controversy, and I'm sure they'll talk about Juan Lebrón and Franco Stupaczuk. So really, we kind of have to wait to that to see or to hear their opinion on Stupa and Lebrón playing that tournament, and essentially, to an extent, ruining the boycott that all the top players are currently, performing on Premier Padel. Now, if you ask me, when I read it, I thought this is just classic Lebrón and Stupa taking advantage of the opportunity and the fact that both Chingalan and Goya Tapia aren't playing in Cancun, and therefore winning this tournament could mean making up a bit of the points gap between Lebrón and Stupa, who obviously sit in third position in the rankings, versus, well, Goya and Tapia at the top, and also Chingalan in second place, who are obviously their kind of most immediate contenders. So that was my initial thought. Now, I have read Stupa's post on social media. He's posted a very long kind of letter, and basically the summary is that his lawyers have recommended him to participate in the tournament to prevent issues with, well, legal issues really. And he says in this letter that he presented this to the rest of the players. So players kind of understood where he was coming from and why he was going to do that. As I say, we're going to have to wait until tomorrow, because I think during the press conference tomorrow, we'll probably hear, well, not just the opinion and the latest update from the players and the top players and the representatives of the PBA, but also their opinion on Stupa and Lebrón playing in Cancun. So I'd almost wait until tomorrow to give a proper opinion. But as I say, I was very shocked. It does kind of feel like it's Lebrón and Stupa's way to make up points. And I mean, my take on it, at least right now, is, so what, lawyers have told Stupa and Lebrón that they shouldn't play, they should be playing. So they've decided to play, but all the other players have also spoken with lawyers, I'm sure, have probably also been told the same thing and have decided not to play. I just feel like if all the top players don't kind of push the same way, nothing's ever going to get solved. So yeah, Gons, do you maybe want to share your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly messy situation, and it seems to get even messier by the minute. I think that, as you very well pointed out, what really doesn't make sense to me is how none of the other players kind of followed Stupa's and Lebron's actions in the sense of like just signing up to the tournament if their lawyers also recommended it. Like, that's what really doesn't make any sense to me, because I'm sure that Stupa and Lebrón were not the only ones thinking about, hey, let's seek legal advice about what we're doing here. I'm sure that everyone within the top 100 has lawyers and they study this very well. So what doesn't kind of just seem to make a lot of sense is why would they, their lawyers go and say, hey, yeah, we should definitely sign up, and the other lawyers are saying the opposite, it would seem like, because none of the other players kind of have signed up. And obviously this makes the players and the PPA's position weaker, right? I mean, you had a very strong position against Premier Padel, kind of boycotting Gijón P2, and the same thing seemed to be happening in Cancún. And all the players seem to be super united on this front. And that obviously, I'm sure, created a lot of pressure on Premier Padel. But now that you have this situation going on, and Lebrón and Stupa seem to have kind of not given up, but at least taken the first action and kind of see their position, it does seem like now the players' union is a bit in a kind of risky situation. It doesn't seem like they have a lot of leverage now with this move. So I wonder how that will affect kind of conversations going forward, and if any changes will happen, if at all. I think also something that was quite interesting, which maybe highlights the kind of frustration of some players with this decision, is that I think Álvaro Cepero, I saw a kind of a comment on Stupa's Instagram post, which said, Unidos, Unidos, which basically means united, united. But obviously that sounds rather ironic. And so probably not very happy with this decision, where it would seem like you have this whole united front of players whilst they're actually not that united. Now, I don't want to get into the whole, would Stupa and Lebrón do this to give up points? Because maybe even Stupa mentioned in his post that he's willing to essentially forgive any points. Maybe the tournament itself doesn't give out any points, or if they have to, let's say, forsake not playing in another tournament down the line, to essentially give other players a chance to give points. I'm sure, I don't want to get into if he's doing this for the points or not, and maybe there'll be more clarifications tomorrow. But what definitely does seem true is that the players are not united. And it's a shame, because also as well, something that happened in Gijón, which is a bit sad, is the fact that the players that did play in Gijón actually got a lot of stick from the players that did not play. So a couple of players on Instagram, if I recall correctly, Pablo Garcia was one of them, kind of in a post alluded to the fact that the players playing in Gijón are, kind of disrespectful. And I think another player maybe even mentioned the word rat. So obviously that's quite a harsh stance. And you're talking about players that are, top outside of the top 100, a lot of these are very young players. So it's a bit of a shame that they got kind of this reaction. And then all of a sudden you have someone like Lebrón and Stupa, being or joining the bandwagon, let's say. So it's a bit of a sticky situation. And out of all of this, to me, the party that seems that kind of has won, or at least has taken a 1-0 lead at the moment, is Premier Padel, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. I think they are literally having a little bag of popcorn watching events unravel. And I mean, basically, Stupa said that he'd originally said, okay, I'm going to stand my ground and follow all the other players, but actually now he's reconsidered. I understand that can happen. It just seems so strange that it's just them out of all the other top 80, 90 players that have decided to reconsider. And also due to the fact that there's obviously, as we've, expressed consistently throughout the start of this season, towards the end of the last season, there's a race between the top three pairs, right? Those are clearly a level above the rest, or at least we think so. Stupa and Lebrón being one of them. So it just feels very opportunistic, right? The fact that it's specifically them, based on their rankings, based on their personalities as well, to be honest, and kind of what the way that they've just done what they wanted throughout. I mean, they haven't really, both players, Lebrón and Stupa, have been very independent in how they've acted, and they haven't really cared about public opinion, which, to be honest, if you ask me, I've enjoyed quite a lot of times. Obviously, sometimes you're going to be in disagreement with what they do, but at least they own it, and they always express their kind of opinion and go with how they feel. So if this is that and nothing to do with the rankings, then, I guess you can say fair play, but I just have a feeling that it might not be. And I don't know whether Stupa has mentioned that thing about the points and rankings, basically, Cancun not counting just to look good. Because at the end of the day, how likely is it that Premier Padel, who are actually going to be really happy with the Stupaczuk and Lebrón, how likely is it that them and even the FIP, who are obviously very closely linked with Premier Padel, I don't think it's very likely that they're going to decide, hey, we're going to just cancel these points. It just seems like something they would not do based on the fact that these are the only players that are really kind of helping and supporting both organizations. So, yeah, I mean, I think I shared my opinion last week or last time we spoke about it. My slight kind of disagreement with the players is I understand they're boycotting Premier Padel, and it's just that why are they only boycotting the P2s? Why are they not boycotting the whole thing? I just feel like if you're actually completely in disagreement, I almost feel that they're kind of a bit, again, opportunistic in the sense that they're missing the tournaments that aren't worth that much money and that many points, but they're actually participating in all the big tournaments, the P1s and obviously the majors. Now, I don't know whether it's because the legal issues implied regarding not playing those bigger tournaments are bigger. I don't know. I'm not in the inside. But that would be my only hesitation regarding the players' current boycott. I don't know whether you agree.
I mean, you might cause World War III if they start missing the P1s, especially if they miss Miami's P1, which is probably kind of the one on the calendar that Premier Padel had highlighted over this year. The first time they're going to the US, given the importance of the market and what it would mean for the sport in the futures. I mean, that would be a huge statement.
I mean, it would, but don't you think that that's what a boycott is? Huge statements, not missing the Gijón P2, which obviously not that many people care about.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends how tough they want to be, right? And I mean, I'm sure that still Premier Padel have heard them loud and clear, or at least it seemed like it, because there were definitely some kind of letters being sent after the boycott that they were, open to sitting down with the players and kind of looking at things over and stuff like that. So you could say that it has had some sort of effect. Maybe as well, they just wanted to initiate it in a way that's not kind of super detrimental, and potentially maybe you don't need to go as far as kind of boycotting the whole tour to make your point heard, and or maybe not, right? Maybe these boycotts to the P2s keep on happening and maybe actually doesn't get them anywhere, so then maybe they take stronger action. I mean, I don't really know, but
No.
I mean, it would have been quite a bold, I mean, it's already a bold move, I believe, to kind of go in this strike. I don't really think I've seen that in any sport at all, or at least maybe not that I remember. And that's already a quite a bold move. So going, deeper into the P1s and stuff, as you say, maybe there's like probably some kind of contractual obligations, because if I'm not mistaken, from a P2 perspective, they can miss some of them. Whereas I think from P1s and majors, they're definitely obliged to play. Sorry. So maybe that could have led to very serious consequences.
No, I'm sure that's the case. And listen, I'm only playing devil's advocate, really. I'm very much behind the players. I would be very surprised if the players, given that they're professional athletes, given that they want the sport to continue to grow, to basically continue growing their sponsorship opportunities, their prize money. At the end of the day, it's a snowball effect, right? And them suddenly kind of boycotting the main tour means that the professional sport is going to take a bit of a hit. So in the short and medium term, it's obviously hurting the players as well from a financial perspective, I think. So I highly doubt that they would, boycott Premier Padel if it wasn't for genuine reasons. It's just that, hey, as I say, I wanted to kind of play devil's advocate and kind of get your view on it as well. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. It's going to be a bit of a weird week out in Mexico. If Stupaczuk and Lebrón don't win, my word, I mean, they could just immediately split.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe it does come now. I mean, that if they don't win, I honestly don't know what else to say. I mean, it'd be, in a way, I'm actually hoping they don't win, because it'll be a lot of fun and it'll be a super interesting tournament if they don't win, because otherwise it's going to be quite clear who the favorites are. And, I mean, I honestly don't think that anyone's betting against them.
No, I'm quite interested to watch them play pairs that aren't seeded within the top, whatever, 50, 60 pairs, just to see how much of a difference there is. Because obviously we've spoken throughout some of the episodes of our podcast over the last 2 years about the fact that the difference between the top players and kind of the other players that are professional, semi-professional, almost at the top, but not in the top 20 is the fact that they all basically have the same shots. It's just that can they do it under pressure and can they play the right shot in the right moment? So we'll see what happens when Stupaczuk and Lebrón play the rivals. I don't know whether to expect them just to be completely superior from a technical perspective, i.e. just having completely different shots and dominating them, or whether it's actually just going to be key points, or whether there's not going to be much of a difference. I'm excited to watch them, to be honest.
No, yeah, I mean, it will be interesting from that perspective, as you say, to see how far kind of the top 100, let's say, to such a, good player such as Stupaczuk and Lebrón. But yeah, I mean, I'll definitely be tuning in. I've tuned into, or we both have, to the Gijón P2, at least some of it. So yeah, I mean, if we've tuned into that, then definitely tune in into the Cancún P2 as well.
100%. And actually, it's probably a good time to maybe take a quick 5 minutes to talk about the Gijón P2, which I'm going to be honest, I'll put my hand up. I was actually down by the beach this weekend. I didn't get to watch a lot of paddle. I couldn't justify watching kind of the 80th best player in the world against the 100th best player in the world. Not even that, actually. So, I mean, regarding, my family, if I only see them every now and then. So kind of took a bit of time off paddle and watching paddle. But I did watch a lot of the highlights. I watched some of the kind of games and sets of the semi-finals and the final. And, well, just wanted to kind of highlight something specific. I told you offline, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers don't know this, but the pair that won, one of the players, who is Curro Cabeza, he's 17 years old, if I'm not mistaken. He's the youngest ever player to win a Premier Padel tournament. I know that has a big asterisk next to it because obviously, hey, it didn't have the top players and pairs in the world, but he is very much associated with the other player who he's just stolen that record from, and that's none other than Arturo Coello, because, well, Curro Cabeza is the brother of Coello's girlfriend. And I only actually realized that because I thought they looked a bit similar. And then I started realizing the fact that they follow each other, the fact that Curro Cabeza recently signed with Head, which doesn't have to mean anything, but it kind of feels like it could have helped. And yeah, I mean, credit where credit's due, right? Him and his partner, they beat Tolito Aguirre and Gonzalo Alfonso, who were massive favourites out in Gijón.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the final itself, I thought was wildly entertaining. 3 sets. The score was 7-5, 6-4, 6-3, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
And just incredible match from the teenagers. I mean, as you said, Curro is 17, his partner, Diego Garcia, is 18. So, I mean, what a weekend, what a week for them, to be honest, going out there and winning your first Premier Padel tournament at that age. So absolutely remarkable. And to be honest, I thought they were super good throughout the match. I think what really stood out was their mentality and their shot selection. There were a couple of times throughout that they especially I think Curro had a lot of like smashes and sometimes it wouldn't work, but then he kind of pull them a bit back and was much better at selecting when to smash, which I thought was key because at the beginning there was a couple of times that Gonzalo Alfonso was able to get him quite easily. And just in general, like the way they were holding on to points, not rushing, the way they were, just their shot selection and kind of the points that they played under pressure, I thought they were really good. I mean, for a pair of that age is honestly outstanding. So I'm sure that they've got a bright future ahead of them, 17, 18, and they really have all the shots. Curro as well, being a lefty, I think that's going to be super helpful for him in his development. I'm sure that he's going to get quite a couple of looks from the kind of top, start getting looks from the top or higher ranked players. And Diego Garcia as well, very tall. I think they obviously both still seem like they need to develop a bit more physically as they look like very thin. But once they start getting, a bit more fitter, we've seen, for example, with Coello as well, when he was young, he was very thin, but then he developed into a physical beast. So once they add that into the game, it seems like they already have all the shots, to be honest. They have a smash. They're really good defensively. I was very impressed about, about that on them. And yeah, I mean, highly impressed. I will say though that from Gonza and Tolito's perspective, it just kind of felt like I don't want to say they threw it away, but it almost felt like they were shocked at the beginning by how challenging it would be. And they were never really it just never seemed like they took them seriously enough. Like, I'm sure that if they thought like, okay, you know what, like, let's stop messing around and let's actually try and play winning paddle, I'm sure that they would have won. But it's just something about them, which at the same time, it's something that I love and I hate about them. If there's a pair out there that I'd pay money to go and watch live, it's them. Because the amount of trick shots that they do and the things that they can do with the ball, honestly, they very much remind me of Tapia in that sense. Just the natural talent that they have. However, that doesn't necessarily translate into winning paddle, because sometimes they just do shots that are so unnecessarily risky and just kind of lead the point or kind of take the initiative that they have from the point and give it to the other pair. So I don't want to say they threw it away, because huge merit to what Curro and Diego did and how they stayed, in that match, even after losing the second set, because they could have easily fallen. But it just sometimes feels like Tolito and Gonzalo Alfonso just try on too many things, I think, or at least from that seem unnecessary and kind of prevent them to winning matches that I definitely think they can win.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it's particularly relevant and important if they actually want to start competing against the top pairs globally. I mean, we know that Tolito and Gonza have been playing A1 paddle. They've been the best pair by far, really, in that tour. I mean, I know they were challenged and actually beaten a lot by Maxi Arce and Gonzalo
Dalbianco.
Sorry, that's it, Dalbianco, Franco Dalbianco. Yeah, exactly. Arce and Dalbianco beat them a lot. But then Tolito and Gonza really changed the kind of momentum, and they are or were, I'm struggling to really pinpoint whether it was very recently or whether they still are, but I think they still are the top ranked pair over in A1. And I don't think it looks great that a pair that's not in the top 100 of Premier Padel has beaten them, and particularly given the fact that it's a 17-year-old and 18-year-old pair. Even though they're great, even though they played a great match, even though Curro just seems so calm when he's playing those bandejas, which he can very easily change direction, kind of quite unpredictably. So credit where credit's due. I just think that Gonza and Tolito should have won the game relatively easy, probably a straight sets win. And I'm not saying they should have spanked them, but I do think that they should have won dominantly, and they lost. And I think it does kind of link a little bit to the fact that they're a very kind of showman pair, and both players individually want to stand out and want to entertain. And I think if they really want to compete against the best players in the world and go far and deep into the Premier Padel tournaments, at least the main tournaments, obviously in the current boycott, they'll probably still make the finals pretty much every time they play a P2. If they really want to go and challenge the top pairs, they need to draw a line between entertainment and practicality. And I think right now that's well, they don't have that balance very well kind of standardized. And I do think they've got to kind of review it to keep progressing, really.
No, I mean, like I said, to me, they're like one of the funnest pairs that you can watch, because the things that they can do is just honestly insane. And not many players out there kind of do pull these trick shots. There's just very limited amount of players that are, showing up and trick shots in and out. So fun to watch. It just sometimes doesn't lead to winning paddle. And I just think that they took them lightly. They probably thought that they were going to get away with everything that, they had been doing up to this point. They did reach the final, so they're probably just thinking like, these guys, they're super young, it's the first final they're playing, they're probably going to be super nervous. I mean, Gonza and Tolito are extremely experienced players, even in the A1 tour, playing finals week in, week out. And when they do play against better opposition, they have been actually quite good. So they have been going, they have advanced a couple of rounds in some of the Premier Padel tournaments before and beaten like, household names. So it just seems like they probably took them quite lightly. And then when they realized that actually Curro and Diego were not there to play around and they were there to win the final, they were a bit struck by that.
Totally agree. I was just checking the rankings actually, and yeah, Gonzalo Alfonso and Dorito Aguirre are, I mean, they haven't got twice as many points as Maxi Arce and Franco Dal Bianco, but almost. So it just shows how much of a jump in level there is between the A1 kind of paddle tour and Premier Padel.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that we'll see them advance. Like, I think that they're definitely going to be, they have the level to be kind of in the round of 16, I would say. Potentially a quarterfinal here and there. I mean, I think definitely they would have to improve a bit to reach that, but that's probably the ceiling, I would say. But definitely they do have the level to be on a main draw, consistent, let's say like top 60 pair, top 50 pair.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I do think they're currently in the top 40 in the world pairs-wise, 100%. It's just, wow, I mean, there's so many top pairs and a lot of pair changes that have happened. I think it's, given that we've only really watched one tournament with all the pairs, it's quite hard to kind of compare Dolito and Gonza with some of the other pairs that sit in and around them. But yeah, I mean, really looking forward to watching them against some of those other, maybe not the Goya and Tapias and Lebrón and Stupaczuk, because I think they should beat them pretty comfortably. But against some of the other pairs, I really do think they can challenge them.
Yeah, we'll have a chance, obviously, in Cancún P2, which just a small update. It's actually next week, starting not this week. But yeah, I mean, that'll be a lot of fun. Again, they'll probably, I'm not sure, obviously they won't be the favorites, but it seems like the level of the draw is a bit higher. So again, very interesting to see how they will do and if they do advance to potentially a final. I think that would be actually quite a fun watch. You'd probably expect not the Neno, Stupan, Lebrón, if they're not on the same side of the draw. But if they do get to play at any point, I think that'll be a quite a fun match to watch. But I think that's probably enough for us today. I mean, Hugo, it's been a pleasure to have you on as always. And I do hope that all our listeners out there enjoyed this episode, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, guys. Pleasure. As always, have a great week.